It begins with one man who dreams of doing something that has never been done before.
To produce a car that goes safely supersonic, it's the greatest element of the land speed record I think there ever could be. It's the sub 4 minute mile, you know, in athletic terms. It's the greatest of the lot.
It ends with a 10-ton car hurtling across the American desert at 763 miles per hour. It's traveling faster than its own sound, in almost total silence. Until... This is the inside story of Richard Noble and his mission: to build the fastest car on Earth and break the sound barrier. It's May, and Richard Noble and his team touch down in Jordan, in the Middle East, for the all-important tests of their thrust car. Money and time are running out, and they have just 4 weeks to prove to themselves and their sponsors that their extraordinary design actually works.
It's a really great moment. We had crises after crises after crises. But we've done it. We've actually got here. I can't tell you how good it is.
Yeah, of course we got here.
It's taken many years and several £1 million just to get this far. Almost bankrupt, team leader Noble has gambled everything on proving his car is capable of even attempting the sound barrier later in the year.
We've got a number of enormous problems actually coming our way now. Well, the most single important thing is that we get the car up to 600 miles an hour, possibly beyond, but certainly 600 miles an hour. That gives us credibility. That proves that we've got a car and a team and a driver that's a viable contender for, of course, the big battle in America.
It's vital they prove their car quickly because they have a rival. American Craig Breedlove, who is ahead in the race. His car has already got within 100 miles per hour of the sound barrier, a speed the British team can only dream of. But this is dangerous and unknown territory. On Breedlove's last run on the American Black Rock Desert, his car suddenly flipped on its side and careered off course at 670 miles per hour.
Jesus, God almighty.
Miraculously, it righted itself again, and Breedlove was unhurt. Now he's rebuilding for the battle with Noble in the autumn. While Breedlove fixes his car, Noble has won extra time to catch up. But the American desert is now flooded for the summer, so desperate and with nowhere flat enough to test the car, Noble has turned to the local knowledge of his supporters club.
I was here in the army 50 years ago, and I used to travel across here twice a week with a tanker full of water to take it out to our base camps. So when it was mentioned to me at the motor show that they couldn't run it because they had nowhere to run it, and I said, well, I know where there's a flat desert. And Richard said, really, where's that then? I said, in Jordan. And Richard said, Jordan? That's not too far. And I know the king. I thought to myself, gee, I hope I've done the right thing. I hope it's still the same, because my wife said they probably built a block of flats on it.
Noble's team arrive in the scorching Jordanian desert kingdom weeks behind schedule. Summer is coming, and the temperatures are rising daily. In a few weeks, it will simply be too hot to test the car. First task is to assemble all the high-tech equipment to run a supersonic car. The headquarters is a converted supermarket lorry with air conditioning, satellite links, and of course the basics.
Tin tomatoes, bread, eggs, cheese, all the tin fruit that we can eat.
Noble has assembled an all-British team of 30, many of whom are taking time off work to share his dream.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be involved in something historic like this. I'd do whatever I had to be here.
It's something you can always look back onto and tell your grandchildren or whatever the case. It's a piece of history.
Personally, I'm not that interested in land speed records, but a lot of people have said, this isn't possible, it can't be done, and I really like proving people wrong.
To take the risk of driving his car into the unknown, Noble has chosen RAF fighter pilot Andy Green.
It's a world first. It's tremendously exciting to actually be a part of the team that's actually going to go out and do something nobody's ever done before.
Green fought off 29 other applicants, including some of Britain's top test pilots, to win his place as Richard Noble's driver.
There was a wonderful moment when I was announced as the driver, and Richard gave me this huge, great key fob with this key dangling on it. And later on, one of the spectators there came up and he had his 6-year-old son with him and said, "Can my son have your autograph?" And I'd been hanging on to this key because it was the only proof I had this had really happened to me. And I said, well, I can't sign with this in my hand. And I gave it to him and I said, hold this, it's the key to the most powerful car in the world. And he held on to this and he looked up and and there's just a look of awe in his face as he looked down at this thing. It's just incredible. I thought, yeah, that's the power that this project has.
Richard Noble was one of Andy Green's heroes.
You know, I can remember when Richard Noble broke the world land speed record, and I saw it on TV and I read about it in the papers. I thought it was amazing. The incredible part is that Richard, with no preparation at all, got into a jet car, taught himself to drive it, broke the world land speed record.
Noble's record of 633 miles per hour, set 15 years ago at the Black Rock Desert, Nevada, has never been beaten. What they discovered later was that if his car had gone just 7 miles per hour faster, it would have taken off, and Noble would have been killed. Despite his brush with death, Noble still dreamed of going supersonic. He knew he would need someone to design an extraordinary car. After years of searching, finally in 1992, he ran into Ron Ayres, a retired missile scientist.
I said right at the beginning to Richard, this is totally impractical, don't even try it.
Ayres had a lifetime's experience working on supersonic missiles and luckily had a love of the land speed record.
I only actually carried on working on the project more out of curiosity. If sometime some idiot should try to travel supersonically, what should the car look like?
His revolutionary design was for a 10-ton monster with 2 jet engines, a long, thin tail, and a radical wheel arrangement. The great danger is, as the car reaches supersonic speeds, it will catastrophically flip into the air. They needed to test the design. First, they spent weeks on computer simulations, checking if their car would stay on the ground. They found a shockwave. A huge wall of energy would build up in front of the car. Although the computer said the car would survive, Ayres demanded a second, more practical test.
Fantastic!
The second method was to repeatedly blast a rocket-propelled model of the car down a test track at supersonic speeds.
Four, what's that line? 3, 2, 1.
High-speed photography and sensors all over the model should tell them if his design would stay on the ground as it went through the sound barrier.
Camera's running at 10,000 pictures per second.
It was a gamble. Only if the detailed results of the computer and the model tests matched exactly would they dare to go ahead and build the car.
The scale, I can remember very clearly plotting the results from the computer analysis against the results from the rocket sledge and seeing this amazing correlation, it is the one time in my life I have ever shouted "Eureka!" Because the effect was absolutely dramatic. I really had not expected that two such extraordinary experiments, I didn't think either of them could work. The fact that they agreed with each other really implied they had both worked.
To build the real car, they needed real jet engines. Luckily, the RAF had a few they no longer needed.
This is actually a hell of a moment for us because, of course, as you know, we've been going 2.5 years in computer studies and simulations and so on. And now, today, we're actually going to start running the engines. We're going to make a filthy noise and we're going to see parts of the car work.
Going supersonic is not just a question of design. It needs all Richard Noble's wheeler-dealer skills.
I believe that the government paid something of the order of about $1.5 million for each of them. We paid, well, rather less.
Yeah, we're just winding back down to 80%, ready for the slam.
Roger. Coming up. The headset on. Okay, we're up to idle now.
Okay, count me in. All right, ready. Go.
Two of these huge jet engines together on the car will give it more power than 1,000 family saloons put together. But there was one great obstacle to overcome. With the two massive engines, thrust would weigh 10 tons and need huge metal front wheels. Steering them seemed simply impossible. So wheels and brake designer Glyn Boucher came up with the car's most extraordinary and controversial feature.
I decided that the only sensible thing to do was to steer the rear wheels instead. And it actually solved all the problems. It created a set of problems of its own at the back end for steering these wheels, but it solved all the problems with the front wheels. I knew I had to phone up Richard and tell him I'd decided to steer the rear wheels, and I was a bit apprehensive as to what he said. I think he mildly swore. We did approach various learned professors, and I had some extremely hostile reactions to it, because they simply said it wouldn't work. Almost in, say, in desperation, but as a last resort, I felt that we had to build some kind of a demonstration vehicle and drive it at speed and steer by the rear wheels and not the front. So my brother-in-law and myself built the rear wheel steered Mini based on his old Mini, 30 years old, and we built it such that the wheel planform of the Mini is a proper scaled version of the full-size jet car. It corners quite well.
This is the final revolutionary layout of the wheels. Two widely spaced at the front and two close together at the back, but with one slightly in front of the other to squeeze them into the narrow tail of the finished car. Now, at long last, they're in Jordan to test the ThrustSSC supersonic car for real.
I designed it purely functionally, although many people have said that it looks nice. One young lady did accuse me of designing the ultimate male sex symbol. But no, it's just literally the shape is to keep it on the ground. That's it is designed specifically for stability.
We've tried to make this the absolutely perfect project. We did 2.5 years of research, and of course we got very, very good results. The question, of course, in everybody's mind is, are the results going to be credible when we actually get here? Is the full-scale car going to behave as the research model behaved? If it doesn't behave like the research model, what on earth do we do?
It's highly dangerous. They'll need weeks of runs to inch their way towards their present target of 600 miles an hour. For their first run, they plan to go a mere 140.
North Team SSC, request arm the parachutes. All stations, SSC is armed. For the video, run 25, looking for 110 mile an hour, peak indicated. And then braking 0.25 to a stop, max mil.
SSC, you're clear to roll.
You are clear to roll. Yeah.
The big question in everyone's mind is, will the rear wheel steering work as the speeds go up?
Dog from bid station. Do you anticipate another run today, over?
Negative. By the time we play with the car, it's going to be too hot.
Roger.
Even at these low speeds, Noble is worried. He goes to look at the tracks the car has left on the desert.
Well, what's actually happened is we aren't going very fast. We're going about 100, 110 miles an hour. And you can see that something has happened to the surface here. You can see there's a very slight sort of convex bulge there. Very, very slight. And it's only a matter of an inch or so. And what has happened is the car's come across this, and it's taken off from about the front wheels here, taken off from about there, and they've started to land somewhere about here. So it's about a sort of there's something like a sort of 6-foot distance where the wheel has flown. It's not very high. I mean, it's maybe a few millimeters off the deck. That's actually what's happened. And with a car that's rear wheel steer, it depends on its front wheels to actually get good lateral grip that way. So if the front wheels are in the air, then you've lost out on your grip.
Roughly as we'd expect.
There are 6 cameras on board the car to record every aspect of each run. And there's bad news from the camera looking at one of the rear wheels. The bumps on the surface of the desert are making the rear wheels twist. If they reach 600 miles per hour, it could be fatal.
You see, when you said yeah, moved up. We're going a little bit cross because it's happened. And we're a little bit angry, but that's not a bad thing because we want it to work. And if it didn't have emotion in it, then it wouldn't be worth doing.
When workshop manager Nick Dove examines the rear wheels themselves, things look even worse.
We've got a bit of a problem with the steering at the moment. As you can see, we've got a bit of wheel play, if you go like that.
Oh my God!
It shouldn't be like that. So we've got to investigate. So chances are running tomorrow are pretty slim. In fact, chances of running this week could be pretty slim.
It can be quite serious, yeah. When you drive your own car, you've probably got some movement in your wheels, but even though your steering wheel is held stationary, it allows them to move. I think if the movement was smaller, I wouldn't be particularly bothered about it, but it's perhaps a bit bigger than I would like.
I hope it's a quick and easy job. Don't know. Bit of a nightmare, really.
As you actually steer, that's real and not noise then?
It's not noise. It's real because it's coincident with the bumps.
The car has 2 onboard computers that record every move it makes in extraordinary detail.
Position so we knew what you were up to.
It's the same place as the videos, isn't it?
So
Using the results, they can try modifications.
and it causes about 2.3.
They come up with a possible solution.
However, those events are very, very quick.
We fitted steering dampers on both wheels to stop the real quick movement of the wheel when it hits the lumps in the desert. We'll soon find out to do the same run as Monday and look at the video evidence after and to see what happened.
Do you think you can manage to do the same profile again?
What, including all the weaving about?
Oh, please, yeah.
Okay, I'll do
exactly the
all
same
that.
track.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll try to find you a piece of desert with the same lumps in as well.
Right.
Yeah.
SSC is ready to roll.
Roger, SSC, engine start.
Roll SSC, North Team, chocks away.
Andy Green tries the modified SSC once again at just 140 miles per hour.
Thank you, SSC rolling. Car starts to creep forward. And now goes up to 79%. Left is just slow to catch up. In about 30 miles an hour. Pushing the power up to 85%.
The car performs much better, and Green can now take the speed up. But first, he would need to paint himself a racetrack.
Being out in the desert is like being out in the open sea. There are no features at all. It's the reason we come here. It's perfectly flat, it's perfectly featureless. There's nothing out here for 10 miles. The car leaves ruts in the desert. We can't run over its old ruts. So we have to have a series of parallel lines in the desert. We'd put them 50 feet apart simply to give us a clear track each time. What I need is then 10 miles of straight white line, and then 50 foot across another perfectly parallel, perfectly straight 10 miles of white line. And that's really what we're doing at the moment, is actually trying to paint a perfectly straight 10-mile white line, which sounds quite easy until you actually try and drive dead straight for more than about 50 feet at a time. It gets very difficult, especially when you've got nothing to follow.
Along each 10-mile track, every loose object which could damage the wheels or go through the engines has to be picked up by hand. It's known as fodding, another job for the loyal supporters.
We're here fodding, but it's also my fortnight's holiday, summer holiday from work, and it's a lovely way to spend it because you get plenty of sunshine.
We're back up about 6, shall we, tonight?
Yeah. Before it gets dark. It's a good fire, is that, Ken?
Yes, I know that, Bob.
I'm a good fire maker.
I've got the wood.
Back to the grindstone on Monday, Tuesday. Bank holiday in
last night on the prairie, my son.
Oh, last night. It should be champagne, this, really.
Well, it's beer, though, if you want it.
Some beer for
If
later.
you're not a Muslim, you can have some.
No, we'll have some for later. That'll be better.
Day by day, the temperatures are rising. The next morning, computer man Jerry Bliss discovers the heat is an even bigger problem than they had feared. One of the onboard computers, Comp 2, has failed. They won't be going faster today.
This Comp 2 is seriously damaged by the heat, in as much as
gets damaged or is damaged.
Is damaged. The heat. It appears that we've dropped out 2 power supplies which are rated to drop out at 100 degrees centigrade, which means that inside the bay it's getting close to or at 100 degrees centigrade. So we may be down to, just today, we may be down for 3 days.
Such is life.
The first run we did, we were late getting out and we didn't run until midday. The temperatures were enormous then. We are, however, always out here at 4 o'clock in the morning, as you well know. And what we're trying to do now is, as soon as there's sufficient light, we'll run for we'll start rolling to the start, so we're ready to start as soon as possible.
Still, the temperature rises and time is running out. While they struggle to repair the damage on the car, they attempt to repair the desert by simply filling in dips and holes.
The weather is unbearable. I was out this morning, out in Andrew, doing the tracks and everything, laying the tracks. I couldn't have stuck it out there much longer. We had to come in. I mean, the midday heat here is, I mean, it's well, 125, I think someone recorded this morning, and it's unbearable. You're just cooking out there. You've got to come in and get away from it. Just drink loads of liquids.
Dawn. And finally, Thrust is ready to run at speed. The whole team prepare.
On a run day, we get out of bed at 3 o'clock.
What's that like?
Dark. No different than getting up at 5 o'clock, basically. Because once you're awake and you're out of bed, it's just a normal day.
I get really nervous as soon as they say over the radio you hear SSC ready to roll. It's like...
SSC South team vehicles are clear in the area. You have 1 shock on the right wheel.
Once you've seen it once, you just can't... You never get sick of it. You never get sick of seeing it. And once it runs in the desert, well, it's just incredible. It's just an amazing place, an amazing thing to do.
Mill power, 120. A little bit of fish tailing at the back, settling down, 175. Peak at 196. Feels awfully quick.
She's so beautiful. I mean, the car's lovely. makes you go goosey pimples. Look, I've gone goosey pimples now. It's a beautiful car. And we're going to do it if we have to push it.
250, drifting left very slightly.
The speed rises to 300 miles per hour. But at this speed, steering becomes a problem.
Car doesn't want to correct for some reason. Looking for 150, 150 now.
Hey, can you pull the protects, please, Robert?
Yeah, put them.
Yeah. Take them out.
Merlin, back at your location.
Thought you were
Didn't correct as quickly as I was hoping,
Ah,
but
because
I'm being
you
very
wandered
gentle with
off
it.
to the left at,
yeah, and I
one
put in
point.
about 40 degrees of steering input and it just sat there.
There's still a question mark there, and it took a long time to actually recover. He drifted to the left of track, and then he applied a steering correction to come back onto the right, but it didn't appear to happen immediately. The question is, why didn't that happen?
No one knows how serious a problem this is. The theory is, with its huge aerodynamic tail, the faster the car goes, the straighter it will run. They decide that tomorrow they'll go even faster and see what happens.
I mean, every day we're moving into the big unknown, haven't we? So, I mean, we've got to expect problems all the time, I think. If we don't get a problem, we've had a result.
Taxman's taken all my dough. He's left me in my...
This is, the boys like, they get good food all week, and they do like, they call it junk food, chips. They do love their chips.
Please confirm, A, that you've got the facts and it's come through all right.
All I've got's this sunny
Lamb or the other one?
Lamb or
and
the
it's
other
not
one.
beef.
It's not beef. I got a big fat mama.
Have you seen the front page of the Independent? Apparently we have a major picture there. Could you use the stars?
Cause I like to live life pleasantly. Live this life of luxury. Blazing on a sunny afternoon.
Today, Andy Green is aiming for 400 miles per hour.
Way off the line, not a very good one. There was a cyst dump. Cyst pressure still looks good. 3.5 to go, 3.5 to go. Late on the chute, and it's still wobbly as fuck. A lot of dust in the cockpit. Oil, shutting the engines down at 100.
He's reached 410 miles an hour, but going faster hasn't solved the steering problem.
I'm having to put massive corrections into the steering to keep the car going in a straight line. Every time I stop giving it this, the car just and it goes. It is unstable.
Okay.
It's just the rate and number of steering
Yes,
inputs
indeed.
is
Yeah,
a
I
lot.
appreciate that.
So apologies for drawing wiggly lines 10 or 15 feet off the white line. That at the moment is the best I can achieve, given the workload in the cockpit.
What about aerodynamics then?
I will
Shouldn't they
get
be
better
coming in by now?
as I get more used to the profiles, as I get more used to the steering.
Right.
But it is very hard work. We always knew that rear-wheel steering was going to be difficult to achieve. We're the first people ever to do this. We've been to the best in Britain, and half of them said it can't be done, simply because it hasn't been done before. We've taken the approach that, a bit like going supersonic on land in a car, just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean to say we can't do it.
I do feel a lot of pressure. When things don't go quite right and there's question marks, then it's sheer pressure. Because it was my idea and I stand by it. There's nobody else to blame, just me.
When they inspect the car, they find a part of the rear suspension has broken, but no one knows why. A new piece will have to be made. It's yet another delay.
It's like this.
But what has damaged the car? Designers Glyn Bauscher and Ron Ayres search the wheel tracks for clues.
So if there's something breaks on this, it's really an accumulation.
I mean, this is huge. Look at the distance up there before his keels come down again.
Yeah.
This is a monster. This is really interesting. You've kind of got some rear wheel tracks here, very briefly, and a front there. Then there's a space there of something nearly 35 feet away before there's any more contact, and the car was actually completely airborne here. It's got no contact with the ground whatsoever. All 4 wheels are off the deck.
The car, when Glyn and I 4.5 years ago started designing it, was aimed at Black Rock Desert in Nevada, which is a softer surface and a smoother surface. We've done a lot of adapting to the design to make it cope with this surface. If we'd known it was going to be like this, well, then perhaps we would have designed it differently from scratch anyway.
Despite the steering problems and fears that the rough desert may destroy the car, the team are determined to push on. Today, they hope to reach 500 miles per hour for the first time. They're going into the unknown. It's now not just about research. There's much more at stake.
Everybody in the team is responsible for his life, because if anything does go wrong, how do you think the rest of us are going to feel? Because we've all had something to do with it. No one can afford to make any mistakes and cock-ups.
Now focus. Looking for max. 220. Shitload of dust coming from the right-hand side, 300. Sweet steering, max burner. 450 drifting left, ignoring that. 500 indicated. Now getting back to the right-hand side. That was the mile 4 tracks, not totally surprised. Off to go. 430. Copied. Fucking great dust storm in the cockpit.
Suddenly, at 540 miles per hour, Green struggles to control the car.
Come on, asshole. Stop bubbling the stick. Looking for brakes.
Something has gone terribly wrong.
Engine shut down, very bumpy at this stage. 1.1 to go. Oh dear.
Anyone a member of the AA? I think we might need recovery.
60 miles an hour short of their goal, there's been a major suspension failure. On both wheels, a main mounting is broken.
There's a shitload of work to do now. Leg out, isn't it? Go on. I'm inclined to agree.
Sorry, which ones are these now?
Top mount.
The top mount for the LDVT?
No, top mount. Have you seen it?
On the other side?
No, this here. Haven't seen that. See what the suspension used to join on to?
Oh, yeah. Oh, right.
And straight through, isn't it?
Well, I hadn't realised that. Yes, that's serious.
Well, my handy what that is, ruined. By one bit of hard desert.
It could take many days to repair. They've been here 3 weeks, and time has almost run out. Noble knows going home with a broken car would be a PR disaster. The battle with Craig Breedlove at Black Rock Desert could be off.
Look, I mean, it doesn't matter about me. You have just 2 decisions. Either fix it here or go home. Yeah? That's all you've got to do. If you can fix it here, then we must fix it here.
Yeah, but you're part of the loop because you have to decide how long we can stay.
I'll keep you going. You get it fixed.
I know you will, but let's...
So that's what you have to do. I mean, you have to really look at the situation here. Are we into a situation where we're 3 weeks' work or something to get it straight again, or in which case that's a serious problem?
It's passive displacement. This is nice and clean. So suddenly takes all the weight and drops down.
Yeah.
Front went first, then the rear.
That's even more scary then. We know we got steering difficulties at the moment. Not difficulties, problems which we have drawn to rectify.
Oh, that's just going a bit too far ahead, that is, Nick, to be honest.
No, hear me out then. Why don't you straight away? Why don't you just go and get it all ready for Black Rock?
do all the work at the same time.
I fully understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you in
Blackrock's a better
principle.
surface.
Yes, I know. But the difficulty is that if we go back here with an inconclusive result, you may not have the money to go to Blackrock anyway.
That is not what we're here talking about. We're talking about design meetings, not talking about money. Richard says you either fix it here in a couple of weeks, or a week or so, or you go back to England. That's the issue.
Well, the question is, we've got to give him the options.
Yeah, that's right.
He wants an answer, which way we go.
He wants an answer, that's all.
Okay.
Back to England or stay here and repair it. And we've got to decide that. So what I'm saying, go back to England and repair it properly.
This is important, it's very important, but I still want to go back and assess all the work.
Absolutely.
I think the important thing is that Nick and myself have done a bit of an assessment on this, on the time it would take. It's going to take a minimum of 2 weeks, somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks, to get the whole job done and Andy back on the desert again. Is that a feasible proposition or not?
Well, we put it to Richard, but I think we can almost guess the answer already.
Sick. Sick.
The fundamental trap is that we haven't achieved the 600 miles an hour we said we were going to do, and we're coming back with a broken car. That's not good. We've then got an enormous uphill climb now to make the money to go to Blackrock. I mean, frankly, we're more or less out of money, so we've got to start again. Also, we're seeing cutbacks in sponsorship budgets and so on. So it's going to be a very, very hard grind. And I made it very clear to them, and they're all saying, "Well, come on, Richard, cheer up. Come on, you're not your normal self." And I'm saying, you guys have just got to understand just what we're up against.
That's the way it goes.
For his supersonic dream to come true, they'll have to return home, mend the car, and raise money by any means they can.
What we'd like to do now is introduce an element of excitement into the afternoon. What we're going to do is we're going to auction a number of used parts from ThrustSSC.
Afternoon, everyone. Are you enjoying yourselves?
$170